6 review. My name is Ryan Peterson. I'm the project manager for this year's senior project. A little bit about who we are. This is the senior production class for 2025-2026. This is a 2-semester long course in game development and production that the CSG majors take all of the skills they've learned over the course of this program and use them to make one large project. A little bit about our development team. We're split into 3 major teams, with the development team, the design team, and the narrative team. And coming up shortly, you'll be able to hear from every single one of these team members about the great work that they have done during Sprint 6. For those of you that may be new here, I'm going to go over our game concept. Our world was a fantasy meets future vibe. We wanted to balance out that cyberpunk dystopian future with a little bit more traditional fantasy elements. We are doing a cooperative roguelike that focuses on a team dynamic instead of playing solo, with flexible character options and 5 different character classes to choose from, that you can also have multiple players play the same class, so you don't have to worry about missing playing your favorite character. Now we're going to get a little bit into the narrative team, and they're going to tell you about some of the great work that they've done.
Hello, I am Bryson. I am the lead for the narrative team this semester. So to start us off, our narrative overview, we covered this a lot last semester, but to get a brief idea of what's going on, we have 5 adventurers who are in a dungeon. They're learning to work together to save their captured ally. They were hired by this monolithic company that has corporatized dungeon running and who has sometimes put aside morals in the pursuit of making more profit. This puts them both at odds with each other, and eventually they face off in the final conflict. So, in terms of cutscenes this semester, we have kind of set up a new system for getting them in. Last semester we had a bit more of a disorganized system, so now we're working with a process of first storyboarding things out with a pencil sketch, upscaling them, annotating them, and then distributing them between the cutscene team. We have run into a few issues with this process because storyboarding does take a lot of time, and it bottlenecks on the one person who is doing the storyboarding, so it's difficult to get the assignments out before the due date. Once we get done with the storyboards, we send them over to be animated in Blender. We're trying to mimic this 2D comic book style, storybook style cutscenes and match the storyboards as closely as possible. When it comes to animating in Blender, there have been a few issues with the character models, and those have had to be adjusted to make sure that they look correct in these animations.
So all our cutscenes are rendered in-game, but our cutscenes are rendered in-game, but we do all the animation in Blender. So how do we get them from Unity to Blender to Unity? I'm Corbin Wilbur. Right, I'm one of the animators on the team. Right, so how do we get the animations from Blender to Unity? We export them all as FBX. We import the FBX files into Unity, then we just reapply the textures and animations, and then we set up the cell shader, then we just record them in-game. Then we export those recordings, compile them all together with the voice lines, and then re-import them back into the game to be implemented as cutscenes. This has a lot of issues. First of all, right, every single animation has to be imported from Blender. This also causes an issue with a lot of models because you cannot export FBXs. Once they have a certain amount of animation frames, they get really, really big. So it causes the export times to get really long. So we've decided to cut those down to keep the export time short, but we have a lot of models as a result of it. Right, so why do we do this? Why do this? It keeps a sense of consistency between all our cutscenes, right? Between the game and the cutscene, they all look the same, and it allows us to apply our custom cell shader to the game.
All right, we're going to leave the cutscene up to the demo right now. I am Jane Younger. I am our team lead here at the 2025-2026 senior production. Our inspirations come through basically with the sci-fi aesthetic and mixing it up pretty much with the fantasy setting, and all tied up into one roguelike. A lot of our inspirations come from pretty much like Guilty Gear, Trigun, Witcher, Cyberpunk, and trying to merge us all together to make it kind of look nice and concise wrapped around with the cel-shaded style. Goals: make a believable 3D, 2D style like Guilty Gear, have it optimized for current and last-gen hardware, make it all look nice, concise, and make something that's iconic and pleasant to look at. Updates: since last time, we have added level 1. Assets have been made, textured, levels been populated. We have official items for a roguelike. Common, rare, and legendary. We have a finalized logo design here. New enemies are modeled and done, but they are not officially in the game at the moment. But we have them pretty much designed over here, so we have one right down there if you see. What is left to be done? Right now, our highest priority is level 3, item shop, particle effects, UI designs. If we have time, we will reintroduce some other content that we put on back burner, such as level 2 enemies, and other enemies. Extras, refinements, and improvements.
How's it going? I'm Brennan Parks. I'm the voice of Tyr and also the main technical artist. So what I do is I work a lot within the back end, making systems to make our art look more stylized. So I've worked on an outline shader and a cell shader. Cell shader's gone through multiple iterations. At one point we wanted to be able to calculate multiple lights. However, it was a little infamous and caused some stability issues and RAM leaks. So we have since axed the multi-light calculations. However, the cell shader still remains. I've also worked on the outliner, like I mentioned. It's based off of either normals or the mesh itself, using face culling to not calculate the faces that it doesn't have to. And then the particle system has also been implemented. I've used a shader for that as well to also be able to edit the emission itself separately. If I edit the emission using the normal particle system, it would kind of get rid of all the color. So I had to make other edits to that as well.
Hi, my name is Ariel Siegel. I am the UI design and concept artist, so I basically do all the 2D stuff. I'm also the voice of Percival. So for our UI design, we wanted to make a UI that would kind of give the impression that you're being monitored by the company the entire time that you're playing. So we made sure that the UI would look like a camera monitoring system. The inspiration that we took was from games like Alien Isolation and Signalis, because they used a lot of old school camera computer setups, so we wanted to kind of emulate that. And as far as actual gameplay UI elements, we wanted to look at Risk of Rain because it was able to balance your abilities, items, and like a bunch of other things going on the screen at once. So we wanted to have that visual clarity while the game is being played. So for the UI design actual assets being made, I used Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop to make things like buttons, menu elements, and so on. Now I'll actually go into the character concept and creation. So we started with some initial designs of 3 of our characters just to kind of see how we wanted to get the feel to look. These are the initial designs for Percival, Astrid, and Felix. And these are the finalized base designs, so we added Tyr and Ronan, and we'll go more into these characters later. As far as like issues that we had, Felix and Ronan had issues with their place in the game, so we had to update their models and looks in order to fit more with the setting of the game, as well as Percival looking a little bit too plain, so we wanted to change up their design a little bit, so these were the updated redesigns. And we have more designs on the way, so these are some of the enemy concepts as well as a hero NPC concept that we created.
Hello again, and I'll be talking about character design. Throughout pretty much the process of how we make it through pretty much having our concepts and visualizations, creating a base rig so we can have basically the development team have something to use while we are iterating over the designs. From there, we can fork off, have someone create animations, someone work on details. And once we have those animations, they export back in with that base rig. People will do the detailing, make it game ready, re-import that model back into Unity, and then we can have someone side off and do the texturing work and then re-import those textures into Unity. How would that process look like? We have here is the concepts made by pretty much Ariel, our concept artist. We have base reg, which was made by me. That was used for pretty much the previous sprint review. We refine, iterate over the design. As you see right here in the next bit, it looks a lot better. And then we have someone and goes texturing it. Here's some branch designs. These player models are officially added into the game now. All right.
Hello, I'm Annette, and I'm going to go over the texturing process and the logo design as well. So for the character textures, we start by creating an ID map in Blender. So that's where we put different colors, unique colors for different parts, materials in the clothing. From there, the UV map, or the UV map and the ID map is ported over to Substance Painter, and then we import the models into it. And the ID map acts as like a mask for the different materials, so you're not like overpainting to another part of it, the model. And then the final texturing is hand painted on in Substance Painter. For the logo, we had a concept placeholder that you probably have seen in the previous playtests, and then we wanted to make it more synonymous with the style in the game. So we just made a 3D model and then ported the model into Blender, or ported the model into Unity, and then put the shader and the outliner that Brandon made, and then adjusted it so it would like follow the style, pretty much. Oh, yeah.
Hi, my name is Brooks Mueller. I'm the 3D generalist for the project. For this sprint, I've been working on asset design primarily, with most of the focus being on level 3 design as well as the implementation of the items inside of this. So this sprint, we've created over 50 models just for level 1 and level 3, as long like with the new item system that we have. These have all been implemented into the game, especially level 1. We now have all the assets in the game, and level 3 will be coming hopefully next sprint. Alongside this, there are only 5 current assets used in the item system, but if you look at the bottom picture, there will be those are all the assets for level 3, plus some of them for level 5, or for the item system. I wanted to talk about the workflow that we have for these assets. It's different between person to person, but at least for me and Jaden, it's primarily going from Blender, UV mapping, and like compressing all of the vertices and everything, going into Substance Painter, texturing everything, and then re-importing it into Unity, putting on the shader that Brandon made, adding the outliner, and then we have an asset. That's it.
Hello, my name is Alex Homeyer. I am on the design team. I'm kind of the main level designer. That's my main focus. So I'm going to be talking about kind of the process for level design. So we start out with concepting. Here are the concepts, the sketches for the tutorial level, the crypt. So as you can see, we start out with just simple sketches showing kind of the layout and the general vibe of the level. And then after the concepting phase, we go into the block out or gray box phase, and that's where we go into Unity and just using simple meshes, just make the walls and floor of the level just to get a general idea of the size and length of the level to see if it's fitting for the gameplay and the character size. And then after the gray box phase, we go to the refinement stage. So that's after we receive the 3D assets and textures. We put those into the levels to make them kind of look how they're going to look in the finished product. And after the refinement stage, that's when we get the finished product. So this is the tutorial level, the decrepit crypt. And then we have level 1, which is the cursed forest. This one has been focused on a lot this past sprint, so it's been updated. And then the cut level 2, which we might bring back if we have time, is the vile bog, a swamp and sewer area. And then level 4, or level 3, the 4th level, is the ancient forge. This is what we'll be focusing on going forward. And so as you can see through these pictures, these levels are in different stages of the process right now, but hopefully we can get all 4 of them finished up by the end of the year.
All right, I'm Ryan Peterson again, and I am also the development team lead. So now we're going to get into the development portion of this presentation, starting off with a little bit about our development timeline. So with this class being split between 2 semesters, we've broken each semester down into 4 individual sprints. And as you can see, this was sprint 6 with 2 more to come. And here you're going to hear from our development team about some of the updates that they've done over the course of this sprint.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Martin, and I've been working on items this semester because it's a roguelike and we need items. Before, we had a database tool for creating item objects, but it was made months ago and it was out of date and it needed some updates. So now we have many more effects. We have like 16 different effects. You can change the item's rarity, whether it's unlocked or not, and the items now apply effects to the players when they're picked up. And now the items also show up on the HUD. So now, as you can see, you click on the item and then it shows up on your HUD with the amount of them you picked up. And because it's using a horizontal layout container, you can fit every item in the game comfortably and it'll just squish to fit all nice and well.
Hello, I'm Jalen. I'm a part of the dev team and the voice of Ronan. And as far as the economy system goes, we've got it completely server managed actually. So each inventory is unique to each character, and so that allows us to individually give them money. And so basically how that works in game, you could see it as inside their inventory they have basically a wallet with a networked money variable that is managed by the server. And so whenever like an enemy were to die, they have an on death function that would call a reward, which will basically put that money into each of the players' wallet. And with this, whenever they're actually trying to spend money, since it's managed by the server, it will only take from that individual's wallet rather than like the whole party, but they all still accrue money basically when killing enemies. And so if you look at this picture, basically it's the enemy dies on death, that alerts the server, and then that'll distribute the money, and it all works independently. And then moving on to our game manager and level manager split. So before, our game manager basically managed most things like as far as like players and enemy level related, and that kind of had it too intertwined with the system in general, and so it was basically doing too much and also too interlocked with the level specifically because we only had 1 level at a time. But now that we got 2, we kind of needed to split those ideas there. And so now we actually have the game manager, which manages mostly like global logic across the game, mainly like players, spawning, connection, stuff like that. And then the level manager itself manages like stuff unique to the level. So right here with the level manager, that would be like a base level manager, and then from there we can actually make like a level manager for the tutorial for level 1, which will handle stuff specific to that level. In this case, our game manager manages now the game states, player spawning, connections, stuff like that, whereas it used to handle basically everything. And then the level manager itself will handle stuff like spawning the enemies, getting the states from the manager so that it can switch spawning, stuff like that, and then more unique stuff like runtime and how long the level's been going.
So this sprint, we finally started adding voice dialogue. Up until this point, we had a dialogue system which was integrated to work with Wise, but actually mostly just handled displaying text on screen. And so while testing voice dialogue this semester, we discovered that Wise dialogues are handled completely differently from normal Wise events in the script, so the dialogue manager had to be refactored. How it works is that we set up the dialogue database in the beginning of the semester to work as a nested structure that takes 4 parameters, and the 4 parameters are passed to the dialogue manager, which then resolves it into an audio clip, and the audio clips are loaded into a playlist and then played in sequence. My name is Haiying Zhang. And then, because this system was made months ago, when I came back to this, it was kind of difficult to remember what everything did. And so, while we were doing this refactoring, I also simplified the code because it was difficult to maintain. Previously, it took 7 parameters for a dialog call. So, the 4 parameters just to navigate the database, and then 3 other parameters to determine the branching logic, which basically determined if you were a player and whether you were talking to an NPC. We also implemented it so that NPCs could talk to each other. And so there were a whole bunch of different conditions that determined the logic for that. And then while we were doing this refactoring, we realized that a lot of those parameters could just be parsed from the in-game state, because Wise also requires you to pass in a game object in order to play the audio from. So a lot of those variables can just be determined based off of those game objects. We also added helper methods for the sound team to access the variables they need. So they need to determine which character the local player is playing, as well as what variable corresponds to that character in the Wise setup. So I just added some shortcut methods to be able to get those quickly.
Hello, I'm Connor Touche, and I was responsible for the player depth changes in SoulSync. So we had 2 issues when it came to players dying. First is that the enemies, they would still aggro or still target the players after they die. So, for example, a player is killed by the enemy, and when they respawn, that same enemy that killed them will walk like across the map to keep killing them. And also, when the player would die, they would not ragdoll or anything. They'd just be stiff as a board, doing nothing. And so the changes I basically made was I had to make a flag basically to signify when the player's dead, so that can later be checked by the AI controller for the enemies. And if the player's dead, then it's set to idle, and then it has an RPC that clears the targeted player from the memory on the server. And then for the ragdolls, the player models need to be fitted with character joints and rigid bodies specifically that are separate from the player model hitboxes, just so that it can allow ragdolling to occur. And to get this deactivate upon player death, you'd have to turn the character joints rigid body kinematics off. This is to prevent the ragdoll or the player model from glitching out. It would act as gravity was affecting each character joint, and it would not look good. But and then we turn the character model parent character model kinematics on, and then you turn the character model off. And then when the player respawns, you do the inverse of that. Just to show what happens if the parent kinematics are not turned off when the character ragdolls. Turn this down a little bit. This is what happens. So yeah, that's the importance of it, and then we'll show you what it looks like when it actually does work correctly. There you go. Yeah, that's it.
All right, that concludes our presentation portion and all of the updates from the team this sprint. Now we're going to transition into a demo by some of your lovely team members, and we're going to give you kind of a preview on where the game is at. So I'm going to go ahead and get our game pulled up. Is it too loud or is it good? Okay. All right, I'm going to go and do a quick create, host our game, and I think I'm going to play as Astrid. All right, so when we're doing this playtest, you're going to get to see some of our new cutscenes. Unfortunately, one of them is not the intro cutscene, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that.
Newbies! I can show you the ropes, but not even I can cut down 1,000,000 beasts on my own. My legacy won't end here, so you'll need to watch my back, okay?
So loud. You're right, that son. Yeah, it's whatever. Let's just get this over with.
Hey, you seem to be ruminating on something. Am I saying why what it is that's on your mind? Processes? I've been claimed, show us the ropes, which I have inferred is an idiom. I do not have that idiom registered in my language database. Are you, perceivable, capable of providing a definition? Of course. I'm simply saying that you will teach us the essential skills of dungeon making. However, given how many of us there are, it will certainly take an immense amount of focus and energy to instruct us. I am knowledgeable in dungeon making myself, so I can perhaps aid you and teach a few of you as well. That will not be necessary. Mordred Acquisitions Incorporated has equipped me with a comprehensive combat and exploration module. You, perceivable, will be more effective as a dictionary. Dictionary?
Mordred has us on a tight turnaround. If you don't want to be fined, cut the group on the session here.
Right you are, newbie. Now let's head out.
All right, so in that cutscene, you got to see some of that comic book style that we were talking about. And as you can see down at the bottom of the screen, we can see some of the player dialogue that happens when players are attacking a little too close to each other. Now, you can't actually damage your teammates, however, our characters will respond to the fact that you are attacking your fellow teammates. Oh, and we got to see a little bit of the ragdoll going on there. And then using some of the money that we've acquired, we have our new item chest here that we can interact with, and it'll spawn an item. And I can collect it, and it'll go right into my inventory. And our boss health bar has now been moved so that it does not interfere with your inventory. And once you complete the level, we also have ending cutscenes. And this gives you a little bit more information about our story and how our players end up in the situation that they're in. And it drops you right into our new level, level 1. We've got Percival trying to speed run the level over here. So this level takes a little bit more of a natural feel over our crypt tutorial level, and we still have a lot of the same abilities where our skeletons will spawn dynamically throughout the level as you progress through it. And over here we can see some of our wonderful set design done by Brooks. I know where I'm going. I'm collecting items. I don't know about you guys. With our wonderful bridge that has collision. Also, you may have noticed in the top left of the screen, we also added our lives tracker into this sprint, so you can accurately see how many lives the team has left. We might even get to see it tick down if Percival just gets blasted by the boss again. And we also have an ending cutscene for this level as well.
So, despite being sold to a death trap, you're still intent on furthering your local influence with this crazy, ridiculous measures.
So, thank you for joining us for our current State of the Game demo. If you would like to play it yourself at home, our project is live on itch, and we have all 5 sprint reviews prior to this that are available to play, except for one. But 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all on the website if you'd like to check them out. But I'd highly recommend playing Sprint 6 and checking out some of the hard work that our team has done. So, thank you.